Hi, I'm Doug Jones. Welcome to my video on the side effects of anesthesia entitled How to Help Yourself, What to Do and What Not to Do. Before we go to 5 things that you can do for yourself, I want to give you a general overview of what's going on with your body from a particular perspective. If you understand this perspective, it'll help you understand how to do these 5 things more effectively. One way to look at the side effects of anesthesia is that it's an extreme response from your body. For whatever reason, your body experienced the anesthesia as if there was great danger. And so your body's response is an extreme response as if it were in danger. This extreme response can go all the way up to the body believing that it's about to die. It can have that level of severity. And what happens is the body gets stuck in this extreme response and begins to loop, begins to go around. Instead of moving through the response and downregulating, it stays elevated, and you stay basically in a crisis mode, an extreme mode, as if there were great danger or as if you were even going to die. The key point here to understand is that this is the body's response. It's not your mind. Your mind knew that you were going to go into surgery, have the surgery, and come out better for the surgery. The trick here is to understand that the mind is not the one having the extreme response, even if it feels like it. And so you can't think your way out of this condition. You can't think your way out of the side effects from anesthesia. Very briefly again, and this is covered in much greater detail on my website, www.anesthesiasideeffects.com. There are 3 main categories of response. There's a mental or cognitive piece where you may have short-term memory loss, difficulty with recall, feeling like you're in a mental fog all the time, that sort of thing. There is often an emotional component where you can have depression, anxiety, panic attacks, a wide range of mood swings. Finally, there's a physical component, the most common aspect of which is that we feel like we have no energy in our body. We feel exhausted, depleted, run down, chronically, horribly tired. These symptoms can also include heart irregularities or arrhythmias, nausea, dizziness, vertigo, a wide range of conditions. Before we get to what to do, I'm going to give you a quick analogy that really will help you understand what not to do. What I want you to imagine is this extreme body response, this extreme loop, is like a huge forest fire. And the challenge here is the forest fire turns everything in its path into fuel. And the key component of not overdoing it is not to add fuel to the fire. Whatever you do, don't do any behavior activity that adds fuel to this fire, that increases or heightens your sense of overwhelm, that increases your sense of being out of control, or that increases your exhaustion, increases your anxiety, increases the depletion, increases the depression. You need to really be careful with the 5 things I'm going to show you to do, that you make sure that they don't turn into more fuel for the fire. One of the concerns that people bump into is that things that have worked to help them self-regulate in the past suddenly stop working. For example, I treated a runner who had had a surgery, and she always ran to feel better. When she was upset or distressed in her life, if she ran, everything would get better. The endorphins would hit, the stress would bleed out. Running was such a great resource for her, such a help. After her anesthesia shock, or after her anesthesia experience, this flipped. When she ran, what had been helpful became fuel for the fire. So she would run and her condition would worsen. She would be more tired instead of feeling appropriately tired and invigorated. She would feel more emotional rather than less emotional. It backfired. A lot of the things that we do normally stop working with the side effects from anesthesia. For example, many of us know how to push through when times get hard. Just work a little harder, give it a little more. In normal situations, this is a huge virtue. When you're experiencing extreme side effects from anesthesia, it's a disaster. The more you push, the deeper you go into the conditions. The more you push, the hotter the fire burns, and the worse your experience is. So you need to really track. There are no generalizations, but be warned that things that have helped you in the past might not help you when you're dealing with the side effects from anesthesia. Okay, let's move along to the 5 things that, in my experience, have been very helpful to people who've been suffering from the side effects from anesthesia. If you're experiencing very severe side effects from anesthesia, the number one best thing you can do is find a practitioner who can help you. External help like this is invaluable with this condition. On my website, there's a video you can purchase entitled How to Find a Practitioner, because there aren't very many people in the world trained and with experience for handling these side effects. For now, I'd like to move on to the 5 things you can do to help yourself. Now, why are there 5? The primary reason is the causes for these side effects are very individual. Really, it's case by case. That's part of the reason it's so difficult to treat. With this condition, there's no such thing as one size fits all. So I'm going to present 5 very different approaches, some that work through memory, some that work through the body, because 1 or 2 of them may really hit the mark. If you try one of these 5 things several times and it has no impact whatsoever, set it aside for a time. Give yourself a break for a couple days from it. You can always revisit it later on in your healing process and see if at this point in the journey, this one really works for you. Similarly, sometimes what happens as part of the healing is at the beginning, one of these 5 things is golden. Makes all the difference in the world. And then as you progress, suddenly it'll stop working. Don't panic. The reason there are 5 is if one stops working, 1 or 2 others may pick up the slack and really help you. One more time, one word of warning. The key point is don't fuel the fire. Don't add energy to this traumatic loop. If one of these exercises sends you into more anxiety, makes you more exhausted, makes you remember less well, stop immediately. The point of these 5 is that they help move you to a place that's more stable, that they help you find a place of ease during this time. Let's start with number 1. Number 1 is called the mammalian orienting response. This is a response that all mammals use to help themselves orient to their environment. Now, the really slick part of this for you, if you're suffering from the side effects from anesthesia, is that this is a non-cognitive downregulation of your central nervous system. So this isn't something that you think and you relax. This is actually lower down in the old brain, the very old mammal instincts. And when you use the mammalian orienting response, it can down-regulate your nervous system. You will calm down. You will settle down but you don't have to think your way into that state. One last thing. It's non-chemical, non-addictive. You can use this technique as often as you need. There really is no high end of how many times you can do this in a day. If it works even a little bit, keep doing it. If you do it and you feel calmer, you feel better, you have more energy or more clarity, you can do it as often as you need, and it can really help. Let's get started. The important parts of the mammalian orienting response have to do with the eyes and the upper body. What we don't want is for the eyes to move around rapidly. We don't want the eyes to pop around the room. What I'd like is the eyes to stay more or less straight ahead. So if I want to look up, I'm going to move my body to look up. If I wish to look down, I'm going to move my body to look down. If I look to the side, my shoulders turn. If I look up, my body moves. So that this compartment acts as one piece or one unit. The second piece is that the eyes, the gaze softens. Now, I'm very fortunate to have glasses. I can take my glasses off and everything gets rather blurry. It looks a lot more like a Monet painting suddenly. And what we're after is just to get the impressions of my environment. It's like we're opening a camera lens and the impressions from the environment gently flow in. This works with a very old part of your central nervous system to slow it down, sedate it, calm it. And it can be incredibly effective for such a simple thing. Okay, just watch me do this. The first thing I'm going to do is soften my gaze, soften my eyes, so I'm not focusing on a point. Just soft, soft, soft. Then I'm going to slowly orient to the room without moving my eyes independently of my head. So I'll turn. As I'm doing this, it's important that I keep breathing in and out slowly. Now I'm using my body to look down, blinking and breathing. I can look up all the time. Very, very slow, smooth movements. And I'm just allowing the external environment to just come into me. From above, from straight ahead, from below. And it really is about this pace. The sense for me often is a giant oh, okay, just like that. Now, you only really need to do this for a few moments. You can do it for as long as 60 seconds or 2 minutes. It's excellent if you wake up in a shock or fright in the middle of the night, or if during your day you have anxiety arise, or you just can't figure out which way's up. You're in a complete mental fog. This technique tends to settle and clear, and those two things can be extremely helpful when you're dealing with the side effects from anesthesia. Okay, let's move ahead to number 2. Okay, number 2 I call memory lane. What's involved with this technique is to actively go into memories. The reason we do this is to access states that are soft, gentle, and have a quality of ease. So we're really after this softness, this gentleness, this quality of ease. These things are often completely lost when we're experiencing side effects from anesthesia. That we lose our ability to find softness. We lose our ability to find gentleness. And we don't have a real quality of ease that expresses through our body. Now, what we're going to do here is I'm going to ask you to make a list of memories. This is deliberate daydreaming, if you will. What you do is you go into the memory and you have the experience that you had in the memory of softness, gentleness, or ease. It's just fine if you need to include an evocative item, like a picture. I happen to have a picture of a sunset that I saw when I was vacationing on the island of Bali. And this sunset went on for what seemed like hours. Maybe it was only an hour, but it was purely glorious, and it kept staying glorious. Even as it changed, it was just one bit of glory after another, and the colors were amazing. And I sat with my wife, and we just sat and watched the sky for more than an hour without moving. And there was this incredible ease and softness, this quality of peace that came over us watching this natural beauty. So I can look at this picture. It's actually over a coat hook in my office, and I see the sky, and I go back into that memory, and I can have the experience of beauty, slowness, gentleness, and ease. Another memory I use is homemade gingerbread with vanilla ice cream melting over the top. When I was a kid, that was as good as it got in terms of dessert time. That was just my absolute favorite. And so I'll pull that memory up. I can smell the gingerbread now. And I can taste it when it started to melt in my mouth. That when I go into this experience, when I go down memory lane, I remember the direct experience of gentleness, softness, and the quality of ease. What's true is part of me has that experience in the present moment. When you're really suffering from the side effects of anesthesia, your body and sometimes your psyche has simply forgotten that ease is an option. It's forgotten about slowness, about softness, about gentleness. It's just, that seems foreign somehow, like inconceivable. However, if you can write down a list of these memories, then when you need them, you can go into those experiences. And what it does is great. Not for everybody, but for most people, it reminds the body that it still knows how to be soft, that it still knows how to be gentle, and that the quality of ease and embodied ease is still possible. Give that a try and see how it works. Okay, let's move on to number 3. Okay. Technique number 3 may be a surprise to some of you, because this is a technique that is widely known and widely recognized, but it's used in a very different area. Now, I've borrowed it from these other areas because it has proven really effective for helping to downregulate the side effects from anesthesia. This technique is known by many names, the most common of which is the Kegel exercise, or Kegels for short. If you want more information on this, you can look it up on Wikipedia, you can Google it, you can even talk to most doctors about it. They're very familiar with this exercise. Basically, what this exercise entails is tightening the muscles of the perineal floor. Now, if you don't know how to do that, the way they teach people how to do that is when you're urinating, you want to just squeeze and see if you can stop and start the flow of urine. And if you squeeze and the flow of urine stops, you are engaging the muscles of the perineal floor. Why do we do this? Well, what happens when we're really anxious, really frightened, or if we're trying really hard to remember something and it's not working, is all of our attention, all of our energy comes up. And it just, wow, there's so much energy and so much effort and so much attention up that we go really out of balance. And all this energy moving up tends to add fuel to the fire. It tends to make us worse. It amplifies the symptoms. It amplifies the side effects of anesthesia. So when we do a Kegel, what happens? Let's do one together right now and watch what happens. Just see if you can squeeze that, if you can find it, and release. Squeeze and release. Now squeeze and notice where your attention is. It's down there. Okay? And what happens is by doing this very simple exercise, we draw our attention downward. We reorient our energy downward. It helps us to ground. It helps us to settle. It helps calm us down. It tends to move the energy downward. Come on down with my attention. If I'm really up and really intense and anxious or trying super hard to think, it really can fuel the fire. And this is another non-cognitive, non-chemical, non-addictive way to draw our attention downward, to draw our energy downward. It is very effective at rebalancing our system and at helping us to downregulate. One word of caution for those of you who are gung-ho, with this particular exercise, more is not necessarily better. You're not doing a pelvic floor workout right now. All you're trying to do is rebalance the system to help the system ground and settle and get quiet. Another benefit of this one, as opposed to the mammalian orienting response, which was number 1, and the trick I'm going to teach you for number 5, is you can do this anytime and no one else will know it's happening except you. Give it a try and see how it works. Okay. Let's move ahead to trick number 4. Trick number 4 is soothing activities. Now, these are really simple. They're activities and behaviors that help soothe or sedate our system. It's not the same as number 2, where we were using memory from our history of softness, gentleness, and the quality of ease. These are actual activities that soothe our system. Now, this is the edgiest one for me to include on this list because it has the potential to add fuel to the fire and make matters worse. So you really have to pay attention. You really have to keep track of what works. And it really is strictly practical, trial and error. Let me give you a couple of examples. A glass of lemonade if you really like lemonade. A cup of hot cocoa if you really like cocoa. Not so sure I'd go with too much caffeine if you're really struggling with the side effects of anesthesia. Sometimes caffeine will become fuel for the fire. But what I found extraordinary is sometimes having a client who's working with me just sit and sip some iced tea. Sit and sip some lemonade. Anything like that can actually help them calm down amazingly. It soothes the system. If you like candlelight and it's night, light some candles. Sometimes that's very soothing. If a fire soothes you and it's the right season and you have a fireplace, light a fire. Bubble baths can be extraordinarily soothing, and we get so caught in the side effects of the anesthesia that we sometimes forget that these simple, soothing activities are available to us. And that's all this one is to find a number of simple, soothing activities that we can use when we get really out of sorts, when we're exhausted, when we don't think well, when we're very anxious or afraid. Now, one more thing to just put out, sometimes short-term memory isn't the greatest when you're suffering. It's one of the side effects from anesthesia is we can't remember much. So it's a good idea to make a list of the simple, soothing activities that worked for you. Also, sometimes what happens over a progression, over the course of treatment, is a soothing activity works for a while and then it stops. Let it go. You can always revisit it later. Move on. Try another soothing activity. Try another soothing activity. This is one that really, the only way to get this list is just being willing to try these simple soothing activities and find what works for you. All right, let's move ahead to number 5, the last one. Okay, number 5. This is a series of 3 exercises that I call hand meets foot. And like the mammalian orienting response, number 1, and number 3, the Kegel exercises, this is a non-cognitive way to down-regulate the central nervous system and to generally sedate, ground, and calm your whole system. And it can be very effective to do it. One quick note on positioning, we need to get our hands with our feet. I'm very flexible, so that's easy for me. Not everybody is this flexible. So I'm going to just show you a couple ways to work with this situation so that you can be comfortable. If you're not comfortable, it won't work. Okay. Before we get started, I need to give you a brief note about positioning. What we're going to need is to have access to the foot. Now, I'm very flexible, so this is comfortable for me. The most important thing is that this is comfortable for you. So let me show you a couple of variations in case this is not easy or comfortable for you. One is to use a pillow of some sort under the hip, under the thigh, to just take the stretch out so there's less strain on the hip. This can work. Also, sometimes we can use the edge of a chair, especially if it's a long chair. So we can get to the hands can meet the foot like this. Another option is to use a stool of some sort, and we can get to the foot like this. If you are very physically impaired or unable to reach your foot, it is possible to have a friend do these exercises on your feet for you. But optimal is for you to be able to touch your own foot. Okay, let's start the 3 hand meets foot exercises. Are you ready? Here we go. The first exercise is to take the toes front and back. And we start with 1 toe and 4 toes. And we're just going to have the 4 toes go forward and the 1 toe go back and then reverse. Just that, a couple of times. Very slowly. There should be a light stretch. That's all I'm after. Then we're going to switch and go to 2 toes and 3 toes. Forward and back. I call this front back toes because the toes are going front and back at the same time. Then we're going to switch to 3 toes and 2 toes and very gently stretch them. This is not a workout, nor is it designed to hurt you. Finally, we get to 4 and 1, and we stretch 4 and 1 just like this. Now, if there's time, you can work your way back up the ladder. Just stretching. You can do just one time or several times with each configuration. Okay? That's part 1, front back toes. Part 2 starts the same way, 1 toe and 4 toes, except instead of front to back, now we're going to pull the toes away from each other. Now I call this helicopter toes because the toes are going to follow the circumference, the outside of a circle, and they're going to chase each other without ever catching. It should look like this. Pull the toes away, follow the circle, like that. Okay? And the circle is here, and the toes are just going to come away from each other and then follow along the outside of the circle. We do that a few times, and then we switch to 2 and 3, come away from each other, and follow the circle. Just like that. And we want to keep them equidistant. I think of a helicopter blade where one end of the blade is rotating and they never catch closer to each other. We don't want that. We want them to stay equidistant away. That's why I call this helicopter toes or heli toes. So we're just going to do a few movements like this, all the way down to 4 and 1. Again, this should be a gentle stretch, not a workout. Okay, once you've gone all the way down, that can be enough. Or you can work your way back up. What we're after, again, is not a workout. You should feel movement and a gentle stretch. That's the goal of these exercises. Movement and a gentle stretch. And once you've gotten all the way back, that's the end of part 2. We're ready for part 3. And now part 3. Now part 3 has a lot of variety within it, depending on how flexible your feet are and how your feet are put together. I'm going to show you the end result, but I've been doing this for a long time and my feet are very flexible. So if you can't do this right out of the starting gate, not to worry. I'll show you a way to modify it after I've shown you the perfect or end result. Here we go. What I'm after is to get 4 fingers in between 5 toes. And we would like the fingers all the way forward and all the way down. Okay? So all the way forward and all the way down. Now, what you'll end up with is something that looks like this. The toes are spread apart. If it's comfortable, this is more than enough. If you'd like a little more, you can do one of 2 things. You can move the toes gently like this, which will increase the stretch, or you can hold the ankle and put a rotation slowly into the end of the foot. There is no right way to do this. Just try it and see what works best for you. Now, if you can't get this, which is the ideal, let me show you how to get to here over time. It's perfectly fine to just slide your fingers in sideways like this. And if that gives you an aggressive stretch, a good strong stretch, that's more than enough. Then in time, you can turn your fingers over, which will make it wider. And then over time, you begin to move them forward in the process until you end up with each finger all the way forward and all the way down. At which point you're free to add in movement of some kind or not. Those are the 3 exercises that I call hand meets foot. Okay, so let me just finish up with a little explanation about hand meets foot exercises, those 3 exercises you just saw me do. One important thing is, unlike the mammalian orienting response in Kegels, you can't do this that often. Your feet will really get sore and it can turn into a negative experience. Especially when you're starting, probably no more than 3 times a day, and then very gently work into this one. Also, what really is going on? Why am I playing with my feet? Well, once again, it draws the energy downward. And don't take my word for this. What I'd like you to do is notice how you feel before you do hand meets foot. Do the exercises. And then notice how you feel afterwards and see what works for you. Many of my clients report that it gives them a real sense of feeling grounded and that they're much calmer and much more ordered. They have more stillness on the inside, and they find that incredibly valuable. Let's review. The 5 exercises are the mammalian orienting response, memory lane, Kegel exercises, soothing activities, and hand meets foot. To conclude, I want you to understand that the goal of these exercises is just a gentle shift in your system, a gentle shift in your state for the better. It's really important that you don't judge the results as not dramatic enough. When you're dealing with the side effects of anesthesia, drama is the energy. Drama adds fuel to the fire and your conditions will get worse. So what we're after is a gentle shift in state toward the better. That's going to be hugely helpful for you. If you're not getting better, the real answer is to find a practitioner. You can use my video on finding a practitioner. Anything you can do to get some external help from a real professional will be invaluable. But these 5 exercises are designed also to give you a sense of, I can help myself. Because when you're suffering from the side effects of anesthesia, it can feel profoundly disempowering. Like I'm not in control of my life. Nothing I can do will help myself. I can't help myself at all. These 5 exercises give you something that you can do on your own for you to help you. More than anything else, I'm so sorry that you're suffering from the side effects of anesthesia. I know it's really no fun. With all my heart, I wish you happiness and health. Hang in there. Don't give up hope. Best of luck. Thanks so much.